What's up, everyone? I'm the devastating Just Cause, and this is DJC Game Studios. Well, welcome to the show, and we are going to talk about something pretty cool. We're going to talk about the early ports of Pac-Man out of the arcade. Yeah, that's right, Bally, Midway, Namco, Bandai, whatever it's owned by now. Pac-Man back in the day took the arcades by storm. It was one of the most popular games and still is to this day. You can still find Pac-Man or Ms. Pac-Man, Galaga, whatever those combo cabinets in all the arcades and bars still to this day. Even at Dave & Buster's, you can't walk in without seeing a Pac-Man. They have the world's biggest Pac-Mans. They've had so many spin-offs of Pac-Man. You got the Pac-Man Battle Royale, one of my favorites. But let's get at it. We're going to look at the home console ports, starting with the arcade version, and then compare the early console ports. And we're talking about Atari 2600, the 5200, the 7800, the Kalikov Vision, the Intellivision, and the Nintendo Entertainment System. Let's check out these different versions of Pac-Man ported to the home consoles. Alright, here we go. Let's get all the early versions of Pac-Man, starting with the arcade. This is what we drop quarters into. You know, what made everything famous, what made everything from Ms. Pac-Man to Super Pac-Man to Pac-Land to... This is the original. Get those power pellets, turn those ghosts blue, get all the points so you can need them all at once. No. Hey, you got the fruit down there. Whoops. Ah! Not playing very well. Let's clear the board just to show you. I'm pretty sure most of you have played this in the arcade. I don't care if you're 5 or if you're 50, you've all played Pac-Man at some point in the arcade. Pac-Man or Ms. Pac-Man, I'll give you that. Sometimes with the multi-cabinet with Galaga. Sorry, playing with a D-pad on emulation here, so it's it's not the greatest. Really? See if we can make it to the cut screen. Cut scene. Or cut screen, whatever you'd like to call it. Anyways, there's the arcade version. Now, back in the day, the only way to play it at home was that we had the Atari 2600 and a few others that eventually came along, but the very first version we were so excited for, and either you liked it, sort of, or you absolutely despised it. But here it is, Pac-Man on the Atari 2600. Yes, he moved upward without looking up. But when this was the only version you had, look at that, you had a side door on the top and bottom. Yeah, you seemed to eat dashes instead, but you know, it was what the graphics were for the time. You could barely see any of the ghosts in the maze. Hey, look, there's a vitamin, not fruit. Because they couldn't make fruit at the time. I feel like, oh, I don't even see the ghosts on the screen. They were so flickery. See if we can clear one screen here. Try to look at this monitor here. Oh! Also, iconic sounds, though, I gotta say. Yeah, the weird version is he never, like, munched upward. Whoops. He just, like, stayed one position the whole time. So he just eats stuff with his head, I guess. Come on, we gotta at least clear one board. I can't see, like, it's so much flicker. Anyways, that's the Atari 2600 version of Pac-Man. But don't worry, the ports get better. So here we are, and this is the Intellivision version of Pac-Man. Select 1 or 2 players. I'm going to do 1. I got to figure it. There it is. Now this actually looks a lot better. The Intellivision did a good job. It took a lot longer for this version to come to the Intellivision. Me, owning an Intellivision, couldn't wait for this version because I thought it looked colorful. The only thing I noticed, just as a kid too, is that the eyes are missing out of the Ghost. They're more just like kind of a black dot that sort of moves around to, like, looks in the directions though. But you had the fruit. That was a big thing. The colors were correct. The only thing is it wasn't like a vertical. It was more, it fit like a horizontal version of the maze, which kind of took away from it. But to play this on a home console at the time, when did this come out? In like 82 or something? This was phenomenal. It was probably the closest thing you could get. See if we can get it to a cut screen on this. Cut scene, cut screen, you know what I mean. I'm a poet and didn't know it. But this one you have Pac-Man going up and down. He's actually moving his mouth. He wasn't a square. You weren't eating vitamins. So this was definitely an upgrade. I'll tell you that. And I used to play this version, and it was, even though it's sub-part of the arcade, it was still colorful and forgiving enough to deal with and understand that at the time, there's zero way you could get arcade Pac-Man on your TV. But wait, because there is more. Oh, I think we're actually going to complete the second screen on this. And they even had cut scenes. Now here is the Atari 5200 version of Pac-Man. Slightly more impressive. You know, this is the one that you probably were like, wow, this is getting close to the arcade. This is looking good. Unfortunately, I'm not playing this. I pulled this up because my 5200, the emulator would not start. So this is just kind of a sample of what the 5200 looked like. And now, let's move on. So now on this Atari 7800, you had a Pac-Man collection, right? So Pac-Man collection on the 7800, the Atari 7800. Let's try this bad boy. Ghosts have some eyes. That's always good. Ooh. Sounds are a little off. But looking closer to arcade graphics, to be honest. I'm not going to say it's perfect. And it sounds slightly annoying. But if I had this version, oh, I'd play the heck out of this as a kid. Oh no. Here they come. They look cross-eyed when they look up, by the way. Is that just me, or do they look, the ghosts look cross-eyed? Oh. Almost made it. Boom. And that's how it's done. Should we see what the cut screen looks like, the cut scene looks like? Here we go. It's starting to speed up a little bit, and we're only at the second level. Slightly choppy, but not bad. Once again, if you had an Atari 7800, this was golden. I myself, for a short period, had a 5200, and I had a 2600. But I mostly back then it was Intellivision and then a Nintendo. I had a girlfriend that had the Kalikov Vision, which is what we're going to next. So here we are with the Kalikov Vision version of Pac-Man. I've never had a Kalikov Vision, so let's try this out. Wow. I must say, other than the weird horizontal setup for the screen, this looks really close to the arcade. Like, as a kid, if I had this, like I said, other than it plays fluid. Like Pac-Man, the ghosts are a little off. Like they're not like their eyes aren't as wide. They're not. But to be honest, this plays so. Look how smooth it looks too. Like this is a good version. They still look kind of cross-eyed when they go up or down, which looks kind of weird. Or they look like angry. Let's try to clear this board. But if you look at like just how the fluidity, if that's a word, of the graphics, like it looks very smooth, no flicker. Everything fits in the maze, which we'll talk about another port that is similar, but does not do. It's kind of weird if they would have stretched this vertical. I know back then you had the TVs, you had the 4:3 ratio. That's what everybody was going for. But if they would have just made it a skinnier, long vertical, you know, and you had the black on each side of the screen, you know, I think this would have been a good port, a better port. It would have looked more true to it. But I understand, you want to fill that whole screen up. When you know, back then that you wanted everything to look like fantastic on there. I want to get the fruit and see what that sounds like. Yeah, see, this is not bad. You know, like I said, I never had a Kalikov Vision growing up. A girlfriend of mine had one, and she had Donkey Kong. I remember playing that going, wow, this is good. But even that's got its flaws. It's not arcade perfect. But this plays fairly well. I mean, really well. I just kind of want to see the cutscene at the after the level, just to see how that holds up. Because this really does fairly look good, and I never thought I'd be praising a ColecoVision game, but like I said, never played it. So here we go. Yeah, they're ghosts. Like they could have had the round eyes instead of the. But wow, that's pretty darn close. But let's move on, because there's more. So now, fast forward a little later in the 80s. Well, I should say, oh wow, this is actually 1993. My bad. That this was ported to the NES, the Nintendo Entertainment System. And they went ahead with the vertical, but look at it looks almost right, but if you notice, the characters don't really fit in the maze. They're a little too big. Like, if they would have made the maze just, like, 2 pixels taller and wider, this thing would have been a perfect, almost perfect, not quite. It's just really weird. Look how small the ghost house is. This is weird because this was also included on the Namco, was it Namco? I'm sorry, Namco Collection 1, which I thought on the Evercade, which I thought was a little strange because this is not the best version. You'd think you'd want to do an arcade-only version of this, but you know what? If you played this on the NES and this was what you remember playing this on, then this is it's that version. It's the NES Pac-Man. You know, and we can go out beyond this, but this is really, when I talk about early home consoles, this is kind of was the end-all one, because everybody had a Nintendo back in the day. Now, you can go on and on about having the, you know, because after this, you really got into, I think, Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo, I believe they may have had ports of this. Let's check that out. But as far as the early consoles, this was it. And I still think, like, once again, no green even on the cherries or on the strawberry. Maybe, like, could have done some the little white seeds on there. I feel like this was a very rushed game. I mean, they could use more. They could definitely have more colors than they're showing, and it just seemed like a very rushed-looking game. Well, Waka Waka indeed. So I don't think any of them really got it completely right. Some are better than others. Some were smooth. I thought that the Kalikov Vision one was the smoothest looking, although the graphics didn't quite match up on the ghosts and the maze. And then you had the Nintendo version where the characters, the Pac-Man and the Ghost, looked arcade almost perfect, but the maze was like wasn't designed or sized even close to correct. So it was kind of like if they would have meshed the Coleco and Nintendo together, I don't know. As far as the early adaptions, I think the Intellivision version was really great for the time. I think the Atari was probably a miss. That was a rushed vitamins, really, and flickering ghost that you can't see, and eating with his head. Can't even go like this. He just has to go like this. There's a lot of terrible versions on there. I would say the best to me was the Coleco and the NES if you would mesh those together. Now, after this, you had versions on, obviously, like PlayStation, and they had collections on like N64, the Namco museums and all that stuff used to come out, and I have those, and those are pretty much arcade perfect, you know, once you get to the CD-based games and stuff like that. Now, a couple honorable mentions, and maybe we'll get into these versions next, but the Ms. Pac-Man has like a 16-bit like overhaul for the Sega Genesis Mega Drive. And then there's a couple other versions of Ms. Pac-Man and different versions. And obviously there's computer versions and all that. But I just want to touch on the actual home video game consoles of like the early 80s into the 90s maybe with the NES. And just kind of comparing those. So they never really got it quite right, which is weird because to me if they took the time, especially with like Coleco and the NES, I think they could have got it pretty darn close and almost right on. But I feel like a lot of games, and that goes for anything, had a deadline, and they were rushed no matter what. Let me know what you think in the comments, but here's some early versions of Pac-Man. Maybe next time we'll try some Ms. Pac-Man versions. Please like, please subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one. Most likely. I need to get something to eat. I'm hungry. I don't know why I said that here. Hey, Scruffy, you like to eat just like Pac-Man, right? Isn't that right? Ow! Every time!